when she was in Arietto's jewelry class, Arietto is little Harry in Italian, and I like to call him Arietto. Harry is kind of formal and Daddy is a little too intimate, so we'll go with Arietto. She was in Arietto's jewelry class in Cranbrook, and as a sampling, as a model project, he made a ring, and she ended up with this ring. He gave her the ring, and she had worn it for a lot of her life, and now she was older, her hands are arthritic and swollen, she can't even wear the ring anymore. She has no heirs. She wanted to return the ring to the Bertoia family. So we met, I got the ring, and Arietto is with me. So, once that happened, then a series of other little episodes happened, and it became clear to me that I needed to start doing this kind of thing, talking about my father. So I will give you a little background on his life. We'll talk about the monoprints a bit because that's the main thrust of the exhibition upstairs. We'll give you a few little stories, and of course we'll open it to questions afterward. Okay, so when Arietto was a young boy in Italy, he was born in a small village, San Lorenzo, in northern Italy near the Dolomite Mountains. And the furthest he had ever been was as far as he could ride on his bicycle. Even though Venice was only about 50 miles away, he'd never been to Venice. But it became clear, even early on, that he was very talented artistically. The young ladies in the village, when they were to be wed, they came to Arietto for a design for their linens, for their wedding night linens. You know, Italy, Catholic deal, wedding night, big deal. So, and his family, luckily, also recognized his talent. They got him a local artist to work with him. Well, it soon became clear, even to the artist teacher, that he really didn't have much more to offer because Arietto was so talented and so skilled. So he suggested that he be sent to Venice, to the art school there, which of course would take money. Well, the father, Arietto's father, was already over in North America. It was a tough time in Italy. There was a drought. They were farmers. The crops had been poor. They were struggling. So the father had gone to North America, to both Canada and the United States, to try to make a new life there. So the mother, in the meantime, writes to the father. She says, Arietto is so talented, they want to send him to Venice. What shall we do? We don't have any money. Father says, well, we can't afford to send him there. I will come home and we'll bring him back to the United States. Okay, so age 15, Arietto has never been further than the bicycle range, and he's moving to the US. This picture is Arietto at age 15 and his brother Aresta on the left. Aresta, his brother, they were very close. Aresta already was living in Detroit. So Arietto came to stay with his brother. Aresta was working at the Ford factory. Back in those days, the auto industry was booming, unlike today. And Aresta was very talented also, but in a musical way. And they would eventually work together on the sonambient, the sounds that you hear in the background. And Aresta made a lot of sacrifices for Arietto. He worked at the Ford plant so they could put food on the table, while Arietto learned the language, and he went to the public school and started to get acclimated to America. And there too, he was able to take some art classes. He won a scholarship to a vocational technical school where he furthered his art skills. And then came the time where he was able to win a scholarship to the Cranbrook Art Academy, which is in Bloomfield Hills, right there by Detroit. Now this was incredible timing. This is one of the metalsmith shops at Cranbrook, which still exists today. It's a fantastic school with very small classes, very prestigious, and Arietta was lucky enough to be there with a lot of other influential people who would become very prominent in his life later on. And for those of you students here, don't see too many, but that time of college and new experiences and being away from home, you really get bonded to those people you're with in your major area of study. And that's exactly what happened with Arietta. That's where he met my mother, Brigitte, and they were wed in the early 40s. And this is where also he started to toy with the monoprints. They came from early on. Now, Cranbrook is also where he began to make jewelry. I have some reproductions of the jewelry, which I believe they have a few available here. And you can go on the website, pick up my card later. The jewelry at that time was very special and exciting, and all the women in Detroit, especially the upper class ladies, they coveted this Bertoia jewelry. It became quite the thing. You know, any woman who was anything needed to have her Bertoia brooch on, and that was pretty cool. In fact, the director at Cranbrook says when they have events, even today, some of these older gals will come in sporting their brooches, and they're greatly admired. So Cranbrook was a real shooting off point for Arietta, and from Cranbrook, where he actually became the teacher in charge of the metalsmithing shop, and he honed his skills with the jewelry. It was just before the war, so there wasn't a lot of metal available, so he worked small with the jewelry. Well, during that time, he got to know Charlie Eames and the Saranins and Florence Schust, who became later Florence Knoll, where the chairs were produced. So all these people, all these connections. So when it was time to leave Cranbrook on very good terms, he went to California to work with Charlie Eames. Now this is the story perhaps some of you have heard, where they were all working on chair designs, and Arietta was very instrumental because he had become skilled with metal. He was taking a welding class on the side, and he just had the vision to grab an idea out of the creative sphere and put it into solidity. And I like the way Val describes it, not only his chairs but his sculptures. It was solidified emotion, where he's pulling these feelings and this creativity and making it into something that you can touch and feel. So he was working, here are just some sketches of the jewelry, some of the jewelry that he made during that era. So he's working with Charlie Eames, and it's a team. There's about 4 or 5 of them. They're all contributing their ideas, and they come up with this great chair. Well, then all of a sudden it's displayed, and it's called the Eames chair. Well, this was a little annoying to Arietta. He felt he wasn't getting any credit, and you know, some of these creative guys, they have egos to deal with, so they parted ways. And Arietta then took a job at the Naval Lab, which sounds very unrelated to art, but even that stint was helpful to him. The way sometimes you fall into a position and you don't really know exactly what you're doing there in your life, but later on you look back and say, oh yeah, I needed to go through that step before I could get to the next step. Well, at the Naval Lab, yes?
California.
Yeah, this is all in California. Right. So, see, good thing I have my siblings here to keep me in line. He basically was doing what we call today ergonomics. Studying the human body, how it moves, how, say, a pilot would be in his cabin and turning knobs, how far could that arm reach, what kind of knobs, would it be this kind or this kind. So he was doing all this engineering and design, which came in very handy later when he began to design chairs. He had studied the body, he knew what was comfortable, how things worked. Just more monoprint sketches. Now we'll come back to this too, but the monoprints, which I believe are the underappreciated medium of Bertoia, they have basically been the same price for decades, which is unheard of in the art world. But part of my mission, after I got the ring and the whole deal, my mission statement, the name Harry Bertoia and the monoprints will someday be as big as Pablo Picasso.
Yeah.
So, mark my word, you're hearing this at the beginning of the journey. 10 years, it would be a different story. The monoprints always preceded the actual sculptures, the chair designs. They were the foundation, they were the groundwork. And at first glance, you may think, well, big deal, the planning stages, the drawing. But no. They are truly an art piece in their own right. Well, this is, here we are, the siblings, Lesta, myself, Val, and this chase lounge, the asymmetrical chase lounge, there was a great little story about that too. Lesta's first husband, they were together for a while, they had business and whatnot. When they separated, some of the things were left with him, and he happened to have in the pile of her leftovers the prototype of this chase lounge. And at a certain point, he decided, okay, he's going to sell this prototype. They had never put it into production. Well, he sold the thing for, wasn't it $100,000 or something? And Noel took note of this. He said, maybe we better put that one into production, which they did. But the chairs, okay, so there he is. He was at the Naval Lab in California, and here come his Cranbrook links again. Hans and Florence Knoll, who were in Pennsylvania, they are inviting Arietta and Brigitte to move to Pennsylvania and work with them on furniture design. By this time, Val and Lesta were born, they were in the world, I was yet to come. And the Knowles, Harry, Arietta, he's thinking he's kind of he was a slower moving, very methodical guy. Brigitte, on the other hand, she's party girl and she's fast moving and she makes quick decisions. And the Knowles are saying, well, we need to know what's going on here. Well, without Arieto's consent, Brigida says, "Yes, we're coming, we're prepared for our arrival." And then she tells Arieto, and he's of course furious because she hasn't consulted him. But as it turned out, and history shows that it was one of the smartest moves that they made. The chairs began, and the chairs were distributed starting in 1952. And that's a long time ago. He was so ahead of his time. These chairs are still popular today. They're still being produced today. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. What other chair is produced for 60-some years? So that was another thrust in his career, the chairs. Then in Pennsylvania, they eventually moved to the homestead where Val is now living. Beautiful place up near Bartow, and lots of nature, lots of trees, fields, dandelions, and nature was always a very strong influence for Arieto. You see the dandelion out in the field, then the monoprints, and ultimately the three-dimensional sculpture. Now let me explain the monoprints a little bit. The monoprints are called monoprints because it's a printing process, but each one is unique. There are no two monoprints alike. The way that many of them were made, he had different techniques, but one of the techniques that Arieto used was he would spread the ink on a surface, and then he would take the rice paper, put it on the ink, and then with fingers, with little wooden tools, with all kinds of hand tools, he would do the design from the backside. And there's a quote from him, something like, "Oh, I had to use my inner vision, and you know, because you couldn't really see what was going on. It necessitated the use of inner vision, and when he pulled it off, it was a surprise. Oh, wow!" And it's as if he was becoming one with the ink. I mean, Val was telling this great story last night. He is doing a repair job of a public piece of Harry's up in Buffalo, New York. So he's welding, and they had to move this huge fountain piece from where it was standing on a platform to somewhere else so they could repair the platform. So the crane man comes in, this huge crane. It's going to pick up this multi-ton sculpture. Well, this guy is so in tune with his crane. You know, they have to avoid the lamppost here, and the building here, and the telephone poles. And he's envisioning it in his mind. Before they ever moved anything, he's saying, "We'll have 8 inches. We'll have 8 inches to spare. It's okay." Sure enough, they do a dry run, and they do the sculpture, 8 inches on the nose. This man is one with his crane. And that's what a true artist does. He becomes one with his medium. He becomes the dandelion. He becomes, you know, he's just right in there. Then, of course, there were many other techniques with the monoprints. Well, sometimes when he did one, he pulled off the first one, then he would put another piece of paper on top of that initial one, but he might add a few more designs. And sometimes he would just take blocks of wood and go directly with the ink right on. There's a beautiful green blocky one up there. That's how that one was done. But always he was planning and That's where the initial creativity came. Yeah, now this is kind, it's almost more like a painting. You take the ink and blot it on there. Now one thing that Arietto did in his life, which has for us as his family left behind, is challenging sometimes. He never signed his work, and also he never titled it, unless he was asked to by a building that was commissioning him. We did sit around the dinner table sometimes, and he would say, okay, you know the piece I'm working on in the shop, they want a name for it. What do you think? What should we call this one? Oh, how about wheat in the field? Sunlit straw. Okay, sunlit straw. But mostly he didn't name his pieces or his monoprints either, because he wanted the viewer to have their own experience. He wanted each individual, let that piece speak to them, and they create their own meaning. You know, if we call that green blocks in a window, no, immediately, okay, it's a thing. It's not an experience anymore. So he preferred not to name things. It was the not signing things that is a challenge today. Now, Val, he will authenticate the sculptures, and he's very good at it because he worked with Arietto for many years before he died. But there's a lot of knockoffs. There's a lot of fakes. The beautiful spray piece upstairs, they had a piece on Antiques Roadshow, very similar, and the appraiser said, oh yeah, you may have paid $10 at a garage sale, and now it's worth $10,000. Well, that one was a fake, and you could tell because of the collar. It wasn't a collar. And, you know, we're flattered that people are copying his pieces, but it's not so good when you're trying to authenticate them. But Arietto was very open-minded. He wanted to hear people's experiences of his art. In fact, when I was growing up, it was, Bruce Springsteen was on the cover of Time magazine at one point. And he comes to me, he says, we need to listen to Bruce Springsteen. So, you know, I'll pull out my music, and so we listened to Bruce Springsteen together. And you know, he's not like a lot of parents with their kids putting their rock music on, like, oh God, close your door. He wanted to know everything. He and I went out shopping one day, this is during the 70s, and we purchased for Arietto, by this time he's in his 50s, we had this whole outfit, purple tie-dye. It's great. People loved it.
His hair like that, bald.
Yeah, oh yeah, his hair was wild. At the end it was like, oh yeah, it's almost as long as mine. Like, Anyway, I see I'm kind of babbling on here. He was a real open kind of guy. Now you can see the previous monoprint and then this one. It's all related, all related. And here's the monoprint, and here's the sculpture. It all started with the monoprints. And I'm here to tell you, if you want to own a Bertoia, and you can't afford the sculptures, which everyone wants, buy a monoprint this year. And we do have some representatives of Seraphin Gallery. We have Lorraine and Rohina. If they can help you. They have many of the family monoprints. All right, now here's some broccoli. I was telling you that Arietto was very influenced by nature. Now look at this broccoli, okay? It's green, it's growing, it's alive. He had a magical way of taking the essence of something and not copying it, not replicating or duplicating, but capturing that essence and making magic with the metal, doing his thing, and broccoli. And he was able to do that with the tonals. You take these straight, boring pieces of metal, you put them together in his way, the masterful way that he worked with metals, and you come up with this amazing thing that can move like a field of grass and can make the softest, most wonderful sound that you would never believe came out of stiff metal. It's an amazing guy. This is one of the last pictures. He got lung cancer, partly because of breathing in the fumes from welding with toxic metals such as beryllium, copper. People told him, look, wear a mask, that stuff is bad. He didn't want the interference. He didn't want something on his face. He had to feel the metal. He smoked a pipe. With his torch, he would light the pipe. He went through pipes every few months because they get burned. No. But this man was passionate. He was so directed. From those early days of designing the linens for Italian brides, all through his life, he stayed totally focused. He wanted to bring art to the world. He wanted to open up people's eyes. He wanted to bring in people who didn't know anything about art or thought that modern art was some weirdo junk on the wall. He wanted to open up the art world to everyone. He wanted to create an instrument that you didn't have to study at lessons for 4 years to learn how to play an instrument. You can take a 4-year-old, bring them up to a tonal, and they love it. They touch it, they bang on it, noise, smiles. Anybody can play a tonal. And Oresta, his brother, they would go in the barn and it was a playground for them. It was just so much fun. They created all the LP, the albums, which are now on CD. And he completed his mission. He was very young when he died. He was only 63 when he died. He could have done a lot more. And he was incredibly prolific. I mean, he would go, our family life, he'd come home from work at 5, dinner was at 5:30, every day of every year, of every decade I lived there. After dinner, Arieto read Time magazine or Scientific American on the couch. He'd take a short nap, and he went back to work. He went back to work. It was his life. So, to be honest, he wasn't around the home that much. And we could have used him more as a father, but he was busy teaching the world a few things, so it was okay. Anyway, this was the last picture, and this is his grave marker. It's a huge one-ton gong on our property. And
kitty in there for the proportion.
Yeah. Little cat. I mean, the thing is, it's huge. And I'm here to tell you that it is a small symbol of a man who was much greater than just a man. He was a very big man. And that was a fitting gravestone for him. So, that's all I have. Happy to take questions. Yes?
You know, I've been collecting the monoprints for a number of years now, and
You're a smart man.
I will forever looking at the monoprints now and calling them the cosmos.
I like that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk a little bit about the process of the monoprint and why you think he did monoprints instead of drawings? Since the monoprint is sort of indirect, and I look at his sculpture and it seems very direct. Like it's well done and forming and forging and so on.
I'll answer that.
Val will answer.
Okay.
Who asked that one? Okay. What Harry Bertoia was doing in his life, connecting with nature always, the cosmos and nature on this planet. So instead of drawing, which is more human defined, he captured nature. The glass plate, the paint, the rice paper. What does nature do? What does God's energy do? There it is.
Yeah, and I could add to that, as a receipt for sculptures, when he sold a sculpture to someone, he would draw a little picture of the sculpture, and then he'd say, 20 inches high, whatever. So that he did draw, and because that needed to be more of a closer replica of what he was selling. But the monoprint process, it was that whole thing of, he was going more by instinct and allowing the forces to come through him, as opposed to, okay, I gotta put a line here. It was more of an intrinsic flowing, and that would be my guess why he stuck with the monoprints in that process.
I think maybe a good point, which came up in the music as well as in the monoprints, was that he did not want to intend himself onto the work. He wanted to allow something to come through him. So on the monoprint, having pulled the first one off, and there are still lines there that are left, and putting the second one on, and then just kind of feeling it. And sometimes he would just get into the motion and not know if he was close to the last line or no. Pull it off, and there would be a white shadow of the former one, and then the dark lines of the next one. In a way, he was allowing something else to happen rather than being consciously intentional. He was withdrawing that. The same thing in his music. The barn is full of maybe 90 different size tonals from 6 inches to 12 feet, gongs and so on as well. And he would say to people, I wanted to create an instrument in which anyone would be instantly a maestro and no one would ever make a mistake. And I thought, what a wonderful way to look at life. Because really anybody, Val and I give concerts, but any of the people who has watched how we touch them could walk in and give us a concert and be an instant master of it, a virtuoso. At the same time, never make a mistake. Isn't that what we should give ourselves credit for doing in life? We are masters of life, and we never make a mistake.
I took a class last week with the Allentown Museum, and they have some of the musical pieces. And one of the guard, I was telling the student, talking about, he said, do you want me to play it? Let me get the white glove. And he went and get his white glove and play it. And after he finished playing, he said, this is my 15 minutes of fame.
I want to mention too that Lehigh University has been a supporter of Arieto for a long, long time. Ricardo knew him when he was alive. They even honored Arieto with an honorary degree.
1978.
1978 from Lehigh University. And even though awards and certificates didn't mean much to Arieto, the relationship with Lehigh meant much to him.
I like the parallel you drew between Picasso and Harry Bertoia, and that was seen in Hilaire Bay, seeing the importance of it and buying so many of his works for the Guggenheim early on.
That's right. When Arrietto was still at Cranbrook, and he was doing the monoprints, and he wasn't getting much positive response from his professors there. So he took about 100 of them. He sent them to Hilaire Bay, who was working with Solomon Guggenheim, and at that time the museum was called the Museum of Non-Objective Art, later the Guggenheim Museum. Well, Hilaire Bay, Arrietto was looking for some direction, some feedback, some critique, so he could figure out how to make them better. Hilaire Bay looked at these monoprints. She loved them. She said, "They're all wonderful. I want them. How much?" So I hear that he stayed up all night sweating about what price to give her. But she bought them all. They still have some to this very day. So she was seeing something in those monoprints. And if you look on the website, and you'll see who in the permanent collections of some very prominent museums and galleries, there are monoprints in their permanent collections. It's, I'm telling you, mark my word, these monoprints are, at some point, they'll be like the Picasso ceramics. Nobody really thought much of it because everybody was so crazy about the modern paintings. But eventually the ceramics became very popular too.
Yes. A little detailed questions about him at Cranbrook. So the connection probably continued, right? Charles Eames, Aristide, and Florence North as well. And whether you know their relationship later, like Noah was there and here, right?
Yes.
And that's one thing. Also, like the second question was, I know like how he interacted with other artists in the 50s, 60s, mainly Isamu Noguchi, all these big names. He probably traveled a lot in New York City. And the second question was like, like those metal pieces, right? The Bertoia piece, actually, that became foundation for what huge two massive sculpture. One in General Motors headquarters, research center by Aristide.
Yes.
Aristide designed the whole building. The commission went to Bertoia.
Yes.
And then this manufacturer, Trust Bank, he did two sculptures. One of them is just suspended there. This is now like Chase Bank, 43rd Street and 5th Avenue. That big metal piece is like much longer than this wall width.
Oh yeah.
They can't move that thing. That's a massive wall actually. And then interacted with like the ceiling, light, and also like like it's big glass wall interacted with everything very well, creating like different light conditioning. So my question is, how did they get those commissions? Like what kind of connections? Do you know about that? Because like most important corporations, they gave those like commissions, right?
Yes.
It doesn't work automatically. He also did this Janice, the TV, one of the best works like in the Museum of American Art. That amazing three-piece work there.
Okay, I can give an answer from my point of view, and Celia, you might have a different answer. Harry was starting small, as Celia described, small and building up larger. And the architects, whether it was Ed Stone or Yamasaki, the architects noticed the proportions, the design, and how to connect to the architecture. Very, very beautiful. So they're envisioning a larger outdoor or indoor pieces, and Harry began to experiment with the techniques. How can we build this size huge? And it was a growing connection.
So you got one commission successful in the next one?
Well, I believe the very first one, the General Motors panel, came when Knoll International would display the furniture. And they encouraged Arietto to display some of his sculpture, which he was experimenting with. And he had one of those panel types, a small version, at one of the Knoll exhibitions. And Saarinen, who he was connected to from Cranbrook, saw that little one. And that's how he decided, I think he could do something bigger. And then they went to General Motors. And from what I hear also, again, a lot of this happened before I was really conscious of what was going on, but the architects loved to work with Bertoia because he could go into a building, I think at the Unity Church. He goes there where they're in the middle of construction. I mean, they don't even have many walls up or anything. And the people are saying, well, we're thinking right out here in the front lawn, this would be a great place for a sculpture. And this is a cloudy, foggy day. And Arietto's looking around, he sees, checking everything out, directions. He says, no, you don't need a sculpture here. You have this beautiful big tree. The sun is going to make a wonderful shadow. The leaves will play. You don't need a sculpture here. Let's find a better spot. So they go into the building, and it's just framing. I mean, you can't really even tell what's what. But they say, okay, this is where the altar will be. He's moving around. Again, he's checking what's what, where are the corners, where's the light. And he says, yes, I know what to do. And with that, it was settled. He knew what to do, and he did. He made a beautiful piece, very spiritual and holy, but not religious. Put it in just the right spot. So he had a real grasp of where was the right place, how to work it in with what they were doing architecturally. He really knew how to do that, and he was on time, he was on budget. I mean, that's almost unheard of in today's world. So they loved him. Once he established a few groundwork pieces, public pieces, he went on to do about 50 of them. They loved him. Yes.
I just want to mention the only experience I've had with your father was when he yelled at us. We were kids playing in the woods across the street, your neighbor's place, and he was trying to record some of the sculpture out in the woods.
Well, yeah, there were many sides to Arietto, and he indeed had a major temper. Yeah, if you didn't do something right, he could really go wild.
I have a comment on that in response. Harry Bertoia developed anger. He had tremendous anger and strength, not only physical but spiritual. His anger was into metals. So if he hammered louder than the workers could stand it, hammering, such a beautiful design of a galaxy or a comet, and it would become a gong. That was anger energy turned beautiful.
Yeah. He was so strong that there was a platform in the workshop that was probably, what, 20 by 20?
Oh, at least.
And with built with 2x6s.
Oh, 2 by 12.
Or 2 by 12s, spaced like 16 inches apart, and with plywood on top.
That's it.
Okay. So, wait. I want to tell this story. I was there because actually we're entertaining this one. I remember he asked his two workers to move the scaffold. He wanted it 2 feet away from the back wall. So they each attached a rope and they start heaving and heaving, and they cannot budge this thing, of course, and what must have weighed a ton, I have no idea how much it weighed. He goes and he grabs those two ropes, and he looks, and he's pissed off. And he moves the whole scaffold. It was so powerful. Yeah. So you were lucky you only got yelled at.
From the curatorial point of view, you look at the monoprints, and they are the essence of drawing. Because, you know, I mean, as a matter of fact, if you don't know that they are monoprints, a lot of people think that they are drawing. And they you know, look that way. It's the same thing with the sculpture, and I am looking at the one that you're wearing. The jewelry is no jewelry, it's wearable sculpture. You know, there is sculpture that you're wearing, you know what I mean? But there is that kind of embryonic thing in the work that come across, and you can read it in very different ways.
Yes. Yes, you're so right.
Well, Celia, I have a comment. It is brilliant and beautiful how you are exhibiting Harry Bertoia's energy in the new generation. And that everyone sees your brightness. And that you can bring a